11:02 now, and I realize some folks are still joining in, but since we have such brilliant panelists with such insightful things to share, I want to just go ahead and get started so that we have as much time to hear from you all as possible. Thanks, everybody, for joining in today. I am sure this will be an interesting and useful discussion. Just so everybody knows, we are recording, so the recording will be available afterward for folks who couldn't make it. So if you're interested in getting that recording, feel free to email me, and I should probably have that in a day or so and can pass that along. One other thing I just wanted to let everybody know about before we get started, after this today at 1, from 1 to 3, there's going to be an advising help / information session that I think will be a really great opportunity for anyone who is a sociology major or minor, anyone who's thinking about it and just wants some more information. If today's discussion sort of sparks some questions for you and you want to talk through them, that will be a really great place to do that. So that's going to be in Armstrong Hall 113 in the conference room. It's also going to be on Zoom. I'm going to post here in the chat in just a second the link for that. So that everybody who wants to attend via Zoom can.
I have the link ready, Aaron. I can do it.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. So yeah, keep that in mind as an option as well for everybody, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and get started with our 6 esteemed panelists, all recent graduates of MSU Mankato sociology programs. All of you are working in or studying universities in ways that make us proud. And so we were happy to invite you back and to talk a little bit about where you are now and how you got there and what tips or advice you might have for folks who want to follow in your path. So maybe before we dive into some of the questions that I have, I've shared some questions with the panelists, and I'll ask a few of those here just to get us started, but hopefully we'll leave time at the end for questions from others too. But to dive into some of those questions that I started with, maybe let's just do introductions first, if that's okay. So each of the panelists, if you wouldn't mind, just tell us your name and a little bit about your background, right? What program here at MSU Mankato did you graduate from and when, and what are you doing now in terms of your career or graduate school? So who wants to get us started?
I can start.
Thanks, Colin.
Hi, everyone. My name is Colin Larter. I am a 2021, I think I graduated, or it's been a couple of years now. I was in sociology. I went through the teaching sociology program with Dr. Eplin. It was fantastic. Highly recommend it. I have a interest in work conditions, worker experiences, labor markets, things like that. I'm currently at the university, Iowa State University, where I am on a USDA grant, looking at meatpacking towns.
Thanks, Colin. Anybody want to go next?
I can go ahead and jump in. Yeah, my name is Andrew Weinzierl. I graduated in December 2020 at the height of the pandemic. I was an interdisciplinary studies major in political science, sociology, and philosophy. And currently, I'd argue a lot of what I do right now is really in that sociological field, paired with really political science. I'm a research manager for a news media solutions company named AllSides.com, in which I conduct research on really trends in like American perception of the news media, which is definitely a polarizing topic, as you can maybe imagine, and focus on who consumes news, why do they consume it, and things like that. I focus on filter bubbles, echo chambers, doing both quantitative and some qualitative research there to help news media organizations better understand their audiences. Similarly, I work for a public opinion research firm, doing things like conducting public opinion surveys, understanding like persuasion communication, storytelling, emotions, values, identities, and beliefs that kind of help people formulate their own worldview or perception of the world, which is very interesting things. And also doing things like analyzing focus group transcripts to help with identifying data trends all around the world. So it's really exciting work. And currently I'm not in graduate school. However, I'm interested in pursuing something in like qualitative and quantitative data research around public opinion research to help just kind of the benefit of the world in that realm. So it's a little bit about me.
Thank you.
I can go next. Everyone, my name is Margarita Ruiz. I graduated December 21, I believe, with my bachelor's in applied sociology and a minor in political science. I am now the administrative assistant for diversity, equity, and inclusion here at Minnesota State University. And that decision was because I felt that there was still a lot of work to be done at the university. So I'm still doing that. But on the side, I'm a community organizer, activist, just trying to get involved in whatever I can to help, stop social injustices. So that's what I'm up to.
Thanks so much.
I can pop in really quick. So my name is Wallerius. I graduated May of 2022 last year with a double major in the general sociology and gender and women's studies with a minor in sexuality studies. Prior to graduating from MSU, I was already working as a part-time advocate at Committee Against Domestic Abuse, CADA, located in Mankato. And then about like a month after graduating, I accepted my current position as a primary shelter advocate. Generally, day to day, my job can look vastly different, but kind of boiled down, I have a set of clients that I work with that are residents at the shelter, and I help them to achieve their individual goals and provide them with resources. And I also handle the helpline where I answer questions. I refer folks to our outreach program, and I also provide emotional support during times of crises.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody, or morning. It's not noon yet. Good morning, afternoon, almost. My name is Jori Nkwenti. I got my undergraduate from the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse in sociology, and then I have my master's from Mankato in the college teaching program. Currently, I am an academic data researcher, which is just like a data analyst. And so I work on surveys and I do large, mostly descriptive statistics reports for the university as a whole, or the college at the two-year level.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Schweitzer, and I graduated from MSU with my undergrad in 2012 in political science with a minor in sociology. And then in 2014 from the master's program at Dr. Hunter, excuse me, was my advisor. Had such a fantastic experience at MSU that I thought at the time I was going to pursue my PhD. So I came out to University at Buffalo. I was a TA for 4 years. And then I got a job in a cancer center in the pediatric department doing data management. And I fell in love with it. And then since then I work as, my career's kind of segued or advanced. I work as a clinical research associate, which means I'm essentially a clinical trials monitor. I work for a company called IQVIA, and we contract with different pharmaceutical companies. So I work exclusively on Roche oncology trials. And so I find myself using my sociology degree a lot because a lot of my job involves looking at trends in data, looking to see if adverse events have been reported on a clinical trial. But also the most recent push from the FDA has been to diversify clinical trial research participation, right? So clinical trial participants are overwhelmingly male and white, even though they don't constitute a majority of the population. So there's a big push now in the latest funding bill that clinical trials have to submit a diversity plan as part of the protocol to the government. And so a lot of my job now involves meeting with sites. I travel quite a bit to different academic medical institutions and meeting with doctors to figure out plans to recruit different clinical trial participants. So it's really a really fascinating job.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for those introductions and telling us just a bit about sort of your background and what you're doing today. I was wondering if maybe for the first question, you might tell us a little bit about how you would say that you're using the sociological skills and insights that you gained here at MSU Mankato in your sociology program. So, thinking about the work you do on a day-to-day basis, what are some specific sociological skills or insights that you find you're using and that are really helping you do the work that you do or doing the research and studying that you do? Yeah, anybody want to take that one first?
I can go first because I'm not my career path, took a little bit of a different turn, and I never thought I would end up in this particular line of work. However, there are a lot of ways where my sociology background is particularly useful for the job that I do. The first part, as a monitor, I'm expected to kind of see the big picture. And sociologists by training are taught to see the big picture, right? So it's really important to, especially when you're thinking about somebody's health, to keep in mind the bigger context, like the social things that determine health. In fact, the majority of our health is determined by social factors, right? So a lot of times when I'm talking to sites that are trying to recruit patients, they tend to look at the individual, like, why are we not getting this patient to participate? And so thinking sociologically about things like race and class, particularly, it kind of helps those sites to overcome those hurdles, right? Is it a transportation issue? Is it, in areas with high Muslim populations, right? There's issues around Ramadan and fasting in clinical trial participation. And so kind of keeping some of those larger things in mind has really helped provide a lot of insight in my job. It's really come in pretty useful.
Great, thank you. Anybody else want to speak to this question? Sort of what sociology or sociological skills or insights you find yourself using in your work?
I can jump in here really quickly and say, I think of a lot of the practical things that I was taught during the program, very, very helpful. They help me secure the jobs that I'm in right now, first and foremost. And those include things like, taking like a survey research course and creating, a proposal for like a research, really. In the work that I'm doing right now, I'm creating research proposals, and that really stems from the program that I was in, stems from very specific class that I was taking, and that really helped me in that capacity. During my day job now, working on my computer, I spend hours every single day in spreadsheets, in Excel, and those are things that, again, through like a social statistics course, I learned a lot in at the time that then I applied to the workforce immediately thereafter. Beyond that, there's also some basic things. Sociology and political science, I had mentioned earlier, that's kind of the realm that I'm in, are very interconnected. So there's so many socio-political problems out there, issues that you're all hearing about, that, public opinion research is really driving, okay, what are people interested in now? What are the demographics of those individuals? It allows me to help kind of understand very broadly, what are the issues that people are interested in? And then kind of condensing that from research into something that can be more messaging, and then push that out to the wider public to say, hey, X% of people believe Y, and this is why they believe that more specifically. I can certainly get into more detail, but that's kind of the crux of things.
Thanks, Andrew. And it's reassuring to know that those research proposal assignments actually prove useful. I'm going to keep that in mind the next time I hear from students who wonder, why do we have to do research proposals? Andrew's proof. It helps. Yeah, thanks. Anybody else want to go?
I can speak on this. So ever since I took Sociology 101 with Dr. Eplin, my life changed. The way that I viewed the world completely changed. The sociological lens is something I just always I can't turn it off. It's always there. And so having that background in sociology and then bringing it to something as simple as being an administrative assistant has been incredibly helpful. I have found other ways to be useful around the office. I'm the one that people reach out to be like, okay, do you see any patterns that we don't? In terms of so we provide a lot of support services for students here on campus, specifically for our domestic students of color. And I provide that sociological background of, have we looked at this or have we looked at that? And using that to be like, okay, here's our problem. And it's probably caused by many different factors going on in the background that we as staff at the university are not paying attention to. People don't think of, oh, this person's grades are not the greatest. Let's look into see if they're eating enough, And so we're providing that information, or I'm providing that information to my coworkers and helping them, use the sociological lens to look at these problems. Additionally, over the summer, I was tasked with helping develop and program for the Maverick Social Justice Camp. And for that, we had a few speakers who ended up canceling last minute. And so I decided to do a really cool activity. I think I remember doing this during one of my classes, the sociological web, where we had students tell me what issues were important to them or what issues they thought were very, at the forefront of, conversations at a national scale. And then I showed them how all of these issues are somehow connected to each other. And that really blew their minds. I even had people in the feedback say, oh my God, I want to go into sociology now. The fact that this is a viewpoint that we can look at the world from is amazing. And so doing that, and I also manage 26 student workers, and I have this sort of background where I can understand all of the things that they come up to me about. They have issues with housing, food insecurity, domestic violence, etc. And so I can help provide, some background information for how to address those issues. Additionally, with my connections in social justice and advocacy work, I can point them into the right direction of how to address these issues. So all of this has been super helpful, even in just this role. And since I've taken this role, I've actually had to turn down a few job offers. So you could do a lot more with this.
So much. Anybody else want to chime in on this question?
Yeah, I definitely do. I want to echo a lot of what Margarita said, because I definitely feel very similarly in the type of work that I do as well. I think the sociological imagination is something that I constantly am looking through and constantly using that lens, and being able to see that the interconnection of someone's personal issues of intimate partner violence and larger issues of systematic oppression is very important to be aware of in advocacy in general. And I guess a little bit more specifically, I feel like I think about standpoint theory every day. Specifically, I think the aspect of standpoint theory that acknowledges that oppressed folks know the most about oppression because they experience it firsthand. So people involved with intimate partner violence understand their relationships far more than any advocate on the outside looking in. And that is really, really important to check yourself in during any sort of advocacy or anything like that. I think it's easy to kind of get stuck into that thought train of being well, I've got this training, I have this pre-established knowledge and whatnot, but ultimately it's just not true. You know, I found it that it's really important in this work to let survivors make their own decisions about their safety in their relationship, and me just providing information and resources as they need it. So ever since I learned about Standpoint, I'm like, okay, I'm going to use this for the rest of my life.
And I just can't help but notice too, just a common theme here, and is how much that sociological perspective really is kind of an advantage, right, in the work that you do, in the sense that it almost gives you a leg up, right? We say in Sociology 101, right, that this is a weird way of thinking, right? We live in an individualistic, meritocratic society where that kind of thinking is atypical, but having the ability to think in that way really helps you stand out in the workplace as somebody with a perspective that's unique, that really helps. It's really great to hear that. Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off, Colin. It sounded like, were you going to jump in there? Yeah.
I was just going to say, kind of on that same point, as the sociologists become sort of a generalist in a lot of areas, but we all focus in our kind of, I guess, preferenced area or, you know, kind of field. But one thing when you start working with people, you do realize that everybody is like an expert in their own life. And kind of being able to apply that when you work with other people is really important.
Okay, anything else on this one, on this question?
For me, it would be the sociological imagination. So echoing that when I'm lucky at my position, I'm able to be part of like the data-driven decisions that the college makes. So making suggestions off of some of the survey results that we get. For example, think of like campus climate surveys, the results of that, then we get to move forward with those in some of the decisions. And then to echo Andrew, lots and lots and lots of Excel, more Excel, numbers everywhere, all at once, and working through those.
Yeah, all the Excel assignments, they pay off too. Yeah, sometimes those things that aren't a lot of fun, in the end, they can really be useful. And so, yeah. That's great. Thanks, everybody. I wanted to ask another question that's similar, but maybe a bit more specific. What would you say, thinking back on your experiences here in your program or programs at MSU Mankato, what would you say were some of the things that you did? Some very specific things like, you know, classes you took, or teaching or research opportunities, or internships, or right, things like that. What were some things that you did while you were here that have really paid off, and that you would recommend other folks do? Just thinking about some of the students in the audience, what are some things, right, that looking back, you'd say, yeah, that was really worth doing. That's really helped me a lot.
So I want to kind of piggyback off some of the earlier points. I think research proposals have been extremely helpful. Knowing how to read one, how to write one has really, you know, when I worked at a cancer center, I was able to write clinical trial protocols based off of my knowledge. It's helpful for grant writing. It's helpful for publications, right? And I think in a lot of ways, it's helpful to kind of learn how to sort out a problem, right? Like you gather the background information, you look at all the other options, you figure out how you're going to solve it, that sort of thing. So research proposals, I absolutely think learning as many applied skills as you can is extremely helpful. The statistics, the computer programs, to the degree that it's possible, I would definitely recommend as many stats courses, but also things online like Coursera. Some of those certificates are really, really useful. And one of the things I tell people about a sociology degree, it's applicable to everything, because you're studying people and you're studying groups of people, and you're always going to be around groups of people. But unlike maybe a degree in computer science, you have to make your resume tell a story, and you have to tell that story. You have to let your employers know what skills you've learned from your program that they will find useful. And in my experience, it's been the very practical things like the research proposal writing, getting publications. If you're able to get publications, that's been really helpful for me. and as many statistics programs as you can, and definitely Excel. In fact, I would almost argue you should not graduate from college until you have a basic understanding of Excel, because it really is that useful and potentially that marketable for your employers too.
I think in that same vein, with sociology, we are very general, like you said. So being able to apply what you've learned and picking up skills here and there. I was once told that sociology requires a very entrepreneurial spirit when you're trying to market it. So yeah, I think it's a really important thing to be able to do is to develop skills, but also sell them as useful to employers if that's what you're going into.
I just will say right quick, and I don't mean to cut anybody off, but this really is making me think about and just want to point out, we've made some revisions to our undergraduate program to make it more applied in focus, right? To give folks more of precisely the kinds of skills that you're saying are so useful in the work that you do. So it's just reaffirming, I think, for me, that we've really made the right call, and that the program, with that focus, it will really pay off for majors going forward. Yeah.
Just if I can interject real fast, and I apologize. One of the things, because I work in healthcare, I'm often the only person in the room with a social science degree. And so I've really had to sell my degree to employers, and a lot of times to colleagues. I work with a lot of different study teams. And so, having a master's degree and a background in sociology, I have to say, no, these are the very useful skills that I bring to this study team, and a lot of it's the stats, the research writing, those sort of things.
Anybody else want to chime in on specific things you did, or like classes, skills you gained that are paying off? Yeah.
So for me, I learned what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do. First, I learned what I wanted to do in sociology in action with Dr. Glasser, where we literally were tasked with this project helping an actual organization, a local organization. It was benches, and helping solve an issue, and just like getting into like the nitty gritty of it all, and just like finding a way of using sociology to like solve this problem they were having, which was how to get their volunteer numbers up and how to consistently keep that keep volunteers coming back, and like that was honestly like one of my favorite classes I ever took in the sociology program. And it just really motivated me to think like you like helping people in your community. You love making changes, positive changes. And that really like solidified that answer for me. The thing I didn't like, I took an internship with someone in politics, and that made me realize I didn't want to go into politics. Politics was too much of fundraising and campaign promises and all that kind of stuff. And that's not really what I'm going for. So I'm glad that I learned what I wanted to want to do with my life and what I didn't want to do.
I will kind of echo that just super quickly. I know the question was specific. I think in the last question delved into a few of the, courses that I've taken that have been extremely helpful to me. But the way that I describe it, very similar to others that just spoke, is I knew going into the program that like I was interested in sociology. I described it as a sort of slice of a pie. And then within that slice, it's kind of funny because I do like data visualization as well. Within that slice, there's areas of sociology. And I just honed in on the data and the research side of things, which seems like it also applies a little bit to Jori, maybe a little bit to Jen here and there as well. But I think certainly also not other people on this panel. And so for me, it was going through those introductory classes, maybe one or two, and then discovering through that process, wow, I really like this one very specific area. And then it really just branches out from there, almost like that sociological web into opportunities down the line. So it was really through those intro classes that I discovered, again, that specific area that I wanted to pursue.
And I think it's funny that, yeah, like in sociology, when I talk to people who are interested in it, there's like the two types. There's people who want to go into like the sort of like activism side of sociology, and also people who are like really data driven. It's funny because Andrew and I, he's my significant other. And so like under one household, we have both sides of the sociology coin. So it's funny.
That's great. That's great. It's the merging of them is great. Yep. Yep. Thank you very much. Anybody else want to sort of speak to this question? No?
Yeah, I would say in terms of a specific class that I think was the most important with the work that I currently do is family violence, for obvious reasons. I was very lucky for when I started taking that class because it was sort of on the tail end of that semester where I had interviewed for CADA for the first time for a part-time position. And it was, I can't even explain how helpful it was going into that because I had no like advocacy background at all. But being able to kind of pull from that class with answers to these like interview questions that I don't have any personal knowledge of, endlessly helpful. I think that class definitely helped me get the job and ultimately where I am now. I'd say more generally for like applied skills, my last semester I did some qualitative research where I did interviews, and practically I think that has helped me a lot in terms of learning active listening, learning how to bounce questions back to clients, because obviously it's kind of a different situation when you're doing research versus when you're providing emotional support for people. But it has been very, very helpful in terms of being able to connect with my clients and ask the correct questions. And again, being active, because it's very easy to be passive when you're listening to things and you're like, okay, next question, let's move on. But with activism and when you're talking about trauma, it's really, really important to listen to the things that are important to them, which I learned a lot with interviewing. So I definitely would recommend that for anyone who's interested specifically in like client work and trauma work and stuff like that.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you, Allie. Anybody else? Okay, well, one other question I wanted to ask that's kind of related, and actually, panelists, this isn't one that I sent to you in advance, but it just occurred to me given the conversation we were having. So if I'm throwing you a curveball, no pressure here. But can you just speak to, if you can, what are maybe some things that you didn't do during your program as a student that, looking back, you think now that you're in your current position, you wish you had, right? For folks who are still in their program, what are some things from your vantage point that you would say are worth doing that maybe in your own experience you didn't do? Anything like that?
A hard yes from me. So I was in the college teaching program, was way like qualitative based, in that sort of sphere, as Margarita was saying, and now I'm in Andrew's sphere over here, right, and Jen's sphere over here, where it's more like quantitatively based. And so one thing that I wish that I would have done is to diversify a little bit more, to be more open-minded to various opportunities, to work in various departments, maybe say the computer science or like the software side, learning like a programming language like SQL would be extremely helpful. Learning, as Jen was saying, taking some sort of Excel class. I had no prior knowledge to my position besides a little bit of quantitative work in undergrad, and a sociological imagination and just like a go-get-em entrepreneurial, like Colin was saying, attitude to get the position. And particularly I'm in a work for a community college. And so having that teaching background, I'm able to sort of bridge the Office of Institutional Effectiveness, Office of Institutional Research is what it's also called, within the college and its faculty. So if we have data on faculty, I'm able to bridge that a little bit. So that's a similarity, but a lot of it are things that if I could have gone back and done it different, would definitely be diversify.
Yeah, it's exactly what I was going to say. I learned basically one statistics program that was SPSS. And I continue on with my education to Iowa here. And I'm learning R, SAS. I learned network canvas because I've been working on like network analysis, a lot of random programs here and there. And I wish I had taken the initiative to learn more. And I'm working with some people in community regional planning, and they talk about GIS, and I have no idea what they're talking about, but I'm familiar with how it works, kind of. But yeah, go out and learn a bunch of skills.
Andrew echoed those comments in the chat, by the way, particularly R and Python. Yeah. For anyone who might have missed.
I would say less than certain courses or things. I agree with everything that's already been said. I mean, learn as many stats programs. GIS is huge. If you have an opportunity to do GIS, it is absolutely desired by employers. But I think one of the things I wish I had known when I was younger would maybe be how to be a little bit more strategic about what I wanted to do afterwards. And because sociology does apply to so many different areas, I would recommend to people in the program now to Google what the top hottest jobs are going to be in the next decade. Chances are it's not going to be entirely accurate, but look to see how your degree could be marketed or to be used in some of those fields. Because again, that is something that we have knowledge that's applicable to everything. So I think if you can kind of focus an area and then learn R, SQL, as many stats programs as you can, even descriptive stats will go a long way on your resume. And you really have to highlight that and be very clear on your resume about that, because I think a lot of times when I've told people I have a degree in sociology, people will mention Freud, and I'm like, oh, wrong social science, right? So yeah, I think definitely being strategic about where you want to go after.
Anybody else want to add anything to these great insights so far? Okay, well, one last question that I want to ask you all, and then I'm going to turn it over to the folks in the audience to ask whatever questions they have. So audience members, think of them. Feel free to put them in the chat. If you'd rather do it that way, I can ask them aloud. But one last question before we move on to that portion. I feel like I would be a little remiss if I didn't ask about graduate school. A number of you have master's degrees, are in a PhD program, or have experience in a PhD program. And so for those of you who have that experience, can you maybe just talk a little bit about, and I know I didn't ask you this one in advance either, but can you talk a little bit about the decision to go to graduate school, to pursue graduate training in sociology, and any tips or advice you'd offer folks in the audience who might be thinking about that in terms of the application process or succeeding in a graduate program? Anything on that front?
One thing, anytime anybody mentions they might go to grad school, I always tell them, every place I've ever applied to, ever heard of, I was going to want a writing draft, a sample of your writing. Find a paper that you're really proud of, or talk to one of your professors, have them assign you a paper if you don't have one already, or you probably write one in your senior seminar class. But get a paper you're really proud of, 10 to 20 pages. Refine it. Even after the assignment's due, keep refining it, because you're going to need a good writing sample.
I would just say very quickly, as somebody who's evaluated grad school applications, that's important for sure. Yeah, totally agree, Colin. Yeah. Jori or Jen, either of you want to add anything on this one? No pressure, of course, but no.
Well, I think if for students who have made up their mind that they are going to go to grad school, I would probably suggest starting that process a lot sooner than you think you're going to need to, because it is overwhelmingly stressful when push comes to shove. So give yourself extra time for that. And for people who might be kind of on the fence about going to grad school, I think it's really important to research the programs that you think you might want to attend. And then the number one thing I would do, and you can find these people on LinkedIn, is talk to grad students who are already in that program, because I think the most important part is going to be the culture in that program. And so I think that in a lot of ways can kind of make or break your grad experience. So I would definitely suggest that. And I would also, and I think this information is available on the ASA, but look and see the trends for the specific areas in sociology where the jobs are. I know criminology is really a popular area, and so is medical sociology right now. And so grad school is a good time to start thinking about that, mostly because a lot of jobs that you're going to get with a PhD aren't going to be academic jobs. The majority of them aren't. So it's really important to think about beyond grad school too.
Okay. Anything else on that one about grad school? No? Okay.
I guess maybe to add on to that is don't go to grad school just to go to grad school. Go because you want to get more knowledgeable and into a field. So, you know, if you're in sociology, but pick an area that you are really passionate about, something that no matter how long you're reading about, writing about, learning about, you will never get tired of it. Need passion on it. You know, if you're getting into families, you should be passionate about the topic. Don't just get into it because you want to make more money, because it's not the way to go if you want to make a bunch of money. You gotta have passion. Gotta have passion.
Okay. Well, thank you all for those great insights. I really appreciate it. So how about now, with about 15 minutes left, how about we turn it over to folks in the audience for whatever questions, comments, anything at all you all have or that you want to hear the panelists speak to. If you want to just go ahead and unmute yourselves and ask, I think that's totally fine. If you'd rather put something in the chat, I can read it out loud. But go right ahead. What all are you in the audience thinking about?
Hello, I am right now an undergrad in sociology and I'm doing a project with some of the professors actually. So one of my questions is, when did you guys first realize you were into sociology? Because a lot of you guys said it was your intro classes, and I'm trying to figure out where we can get sociology students the best.
Great question. Yeah. Who wants to take that one?
I don't know about everyone else, but I came into undergrad undeclared, and I went into criminal justice. And then the sociology department was blended with CJ. But I would say after taking a few classes, they really academically kidnapped me, and I could never get away. I never wanted to leave. I still dabble in CJ stuff, but they could never really get me back. So maybe something like that, you know, you got to kidnap them a bit. It's a good way to do it. I did my undergrad up in Moorhead. Yeah.
So just to be clear, they were the kidnappers.
Yes. Yeah.
Good kidnappers.
You guys can do it too.
Yeah.
So is the question, if I'm understanding correctly, how to entice more people to be a sociology major, or the best point at which to capture them? So I think one of the things about the social sciences is that people tend to be drawn to fields that they already love, right? And especially when you're allowed to pick classes that you're interested in. So I think the trick, honestly, for all social sciences is to capture the people who are on the fence, you know, and I think a good way to do that is to really illustrate how marketable the degree is. And I know that sounds kind of jaded because, you know, we have really high ideals in sociology, but the reality is after your graduation, a lot of us are going to have student loans, right? And so it's, you know, a college education is always a better investment than not. But I think a good way to go about it is kind of things like this, where we can talk to other people and show that the degree is useful in a lot of ways, because there aren't staff sociology jobs. So you're not, you know, like there are staff psychologist jobs, there's social work jobs, but I think the real trick is convincing people that this degree is extremely useful in the job market after you're done.
So for me, I had a very interesting kind of experience going into sociology, because I was originally a political science major and a sociology minor. And first, the political science classes were super dry and I was bored out of my mind. The sociology classes, when I went into it, originally I was like, yeah, I'm probably going to know a lot of this stuff, being a person of color, first generation, Mexican American, etc. And yes, I did know a lot of that stuff. However, going into 101, I learned the specific terminology for things that I had already experienced. And like that, essentially, like if you can picture the galaxy brain meme, that is how I felt kind of going into it, where I was like, okay, I'm making sense now. But by the end of it, I was like, this is a completely different worldview I have, like exploded entirely. And I went into sociology specifically because I did hear that it was a little bit more of like the social justice-y type stuff that I'm really interested in. And whenever anyone asked me, like, what do you want to do with your life? My always surefire answer was, I want to change the world. And I had no idea how to do it. I did not go into sociology with the purpose of finding a specific job. I went into it with this idea of like, I want to learn the tools necessary to achieve that goal of changing the world.
Yeah, to add on to that really quickly, my experience, I was completely undecided until sophomore year first semester. And I had taken sociology my freshman year, intro to soc, and then also juvenile delinquency at the same time. And I was like, uh-oh. I'm like, oh no, I'm really enjoying this content. And a lot of this is clicking, a lot of this is making sense. And then I took sociology of human sexualities with Dr. Westphal. And I was like, oh no, this is going to actually end up being exactly what I want to be learning for the next 4 years and be an ongoing learning experience. So for at least me personally, I ended up getting hooked into sociology because I wanted a pool of knowledge that wasn't like accessible to me beforehand. And being able to see conversations being laid out very point blank in an academic atmosphere it kind of just changed a lot for me, because I had never had these conversations beforehand. So I think having, of course, like, you know, the practical knowledge and all of that is very important, but having classes that actually connect to people's lived experiences, I think is what ultimately brought me to declaring my major. So.
And that actually, just for folks who maybe didn't see, I think that really connects pretty nicely with a really great comment Colin added in the chat too, about, you know, people are trying to make sense of a very unsettled world right now, and understandably have a lot of questions about why things happen the way they do. And sociology is really well positioned to provide some insightful answers to that. Yeah, I think that builds a lot on what you were saying there, Allie. Yeah, go right ahead, Jori.
One quick, just to tackle it directly, Olivia, the question, I would be interested looking into how can you pair a sociology major or a sociology minor with another major or another minor, for the fact that the reason, this goes back to Dr. Hoy's previous question of graduate school, I had to get my master's because I couldn't find any opportunities out of undergrad. And so then I got my master's in college teaching. I couldn't find any two-level community college teaching instructor gigs. And so that's when I had to, swivel again, right? Reassess and then go into data analysis. And so if I was to, suggest something, maybe, sociology with data science or something like that, maybe we may be able to get more retention, maybe able to recruit more. I do a lot of data at Century College with retention and recruitment and looking at that. And so that would be one suggestion I would look into on how to capture various audiences into sociology program.
Thank you all for your great answers there to Olivia's really good question. But I noticed also Dr. Glasser has her hand up. So do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah. There's only a little bit of time left. So hopefully one or two of you can chime in. So I am sort of one of the researchy people, and I teach the intro research methods class, and I teach survey research, and I teach sociology in action, which is basically a community engaged research class. And I come from a nonprofit background. So I get really excited about research, and my entryway into sociology was research, and something that I think that I see, but I'm a middle-aged lady, so sometimes I'm a little detached from what students are experiencing, is that students feel like they have to take the research classes, but that's not why they're in sociology. And so the connections aren't necessarily there. And so I'm wondering to me, our research skills are so marketable, and sociologists have everything. They have the way to think about systemic issues. They have the way to study systemic issues. They have critical thinking. And I'm just wondering, in your experiences, was this research piece something that we as professors were making interesting and we're making the connections for you with, or is this an area, because a lot of you are doing research now, right? So whether it's qualitative, quantitative, systemic research, or even like Margarita's consistently collecting data and information, right, to serve the population, even if it's not a formal research job. So I'm just wondering, as professors, what can I do, or what do you wish might have happened for someone to make those connections for you? Or were the connections there and I'm worrying about an issue that's not there?
Love that question. Yeah.
For me, the research bits, like the really data analytical side of things, was really dry to me. And it didn't have to be. I mean, I was in senior seminar and Dr. Waskell was like, you can just put things on a paper. You don't have to be like super analytical, just put things on a paper. And I was like, you can do that? And that really kind of like changed my perspective on how to do research, and, just kind of like making it more personable to the individual, because we all kind of have different like learning styles and ways that we go about looking at the world. Like I said, I like the really hands-on sort of stuff that we did in sociology in action. The survey methodology type of stuff was not really my style, but I definitely understand that it is very worthwhile to study in your undergrad.
Thanks.
I don't know that there's a lot that can be done to really, because a lot of the things that I have found to be the most marketable were probably the courses that at the time seemed the least not stimulating, but I found a lot of, when I went to my PhD program, I had an opportunity to take a lot of stats classes. Those have been exceptionally helpful for me in the job market. I'm not quite sure how you can really spice up a stats class. I think the subject matter is always interesting when it's sociology, but I think for a lot of those like formulaic classes, the research proposal, learning some of the languages, I just think some of that it was as interesting as I think it ever could be.
I don't know about, I mean, I kind of agree. When it comes to like statistical analysis courses, like, you know, regression classes or whatever. But one thing I would say is that with, you know, research methods, you're really learning how to take something you want to learn about a question and how to operationalize it so you can ask that question in a way you get answers back. People have questions. They probably like to know how to ask those questions to get answers. And I think that's one way you could really make it personal, or kind of bridge that gap between, you know, I want to learn about the world, but like that analysis stuff is really scary. Make it not so scary.
I'll echo that really quickly, Dr. Glasser, and say, yeah, research methods is what I would probably raise as well, allowing a hands-on approach where students can build their own surveys. I know that's one thing coming out of the program. I know that I did a lot of research, no pun intended, on how to conduct like qualitative surveys, for example. Also hands-on interviews, experiments, doing first versus third party or even meta-analysis, and kind of introducing that into those research courses, I think might be beneficial and allow people to understand, hey, this is a research method that really speaks to me the most. I'm still trying to decide whether I like qualitative or quantitative research more for the future of my career. And I think giving that kind of taste to the students, which I think is already being done, but making it interactive would be really, really cool to do.
Okay, realize we just have 2 minutes left, but does anybody else want to speak to this question?
I would say echoing as interactive as possible, and applicable as possible, like real life examples, which I'm assuming that is part of like your curriculum. And then also, Dr. Glasser, I follow you on LinkedIn, and like everything that you post there, like nonprofit wise and stuff like that, is like really fascinating. So connecting like maybe that to some of like the research, so it's like more like, this is what I'm doing, right? This is like this, and this is also what's out here. And I think you did like a poll or something. You had a poll going a little bit ago on something, I think that was in relation to that. And so I would say, like, I think you are more in touch than you give yourself credit for.
Okay.
Thank you. That was really helpful, everyone.
Oh, sorry, is just tangentially related. LinkedIn can be a really pretty useful resource. And so I would recommend familiarizing yourself with it as much as possible, because it can really be handy.
Okay, well, we are at 11:59, so let me just say, first and foremost, thank you so much to all of our panelists for sharing your experiences, sharing your insights with us. I really, really appreciate it. It was really, really helpful and so great to hear from all of you. Just a quick reminder also before we depart to everybody in the audience that again, from 1 to 3 today in the Armstrong Hall 113 conference room and on Zoom, where there's the link in the chat, there's going to be a very, very helpful advising and information session. So if any of this sparked any questions for you, or if you just have any other kinds of questions about sociology majors and careers or anything like that, feel free to stop by. There will be snacks, so you could just make up questions to come get some snacks. That would be okay. That would be totally okay. Okay, thanks everybody for joining in today. Really appreciate it. Feel free to reach out with any questions or anything. Okay. All right.
Thank
thanks.
you.